Hello hook loopers, welcome to my crochet channel. I'm Sarah. As anticipated, in today's video I will show you how to make this lovely leaf motif in Tunisian crochet. As you see, this is worked in Tunisian Rib Stitch and it is created through increasing and decreasing. So basically I will show you how to make this leaf here. Okay, so I will start from here and go all the way to here. This center part here I will call the stem of the leaf, and these will be the ramifications, let's say. So let's begin. As usual, I will leave all useful links for all techniques and stitches used in this video in the description below and in the top right hand corner of this video itself. So here I have started from a very short standard foundation row in Tunisian crochet of 8 stitches, which usually counts for me as row number 1. And we will begin with the first row of our repetition, which is worked in Tunisian Rib Stitch across. So the Tunisian Rib Stitch, I remind you, is made like this. So you work, well, first of all it is worked in pairs of stitches. The first stitch is worked in Tunisian simple stitch, which is done like this, going under the first vertical bar from right to left, yarning over, pulling through and drawing up a loop on the hook, followed by a Tunisian twisted stitch in the next stitch, which is done by going with the hook from left to right this time under the next vertical bar, like this, stretching out the vertical bar a bit with the hook, then twisting the hook upwards like this, so that the stitch leans towards the simple stitch just made. Then we yarn over, pull through and drop another loop, and this is our rib stitch. And we will proceed like this. So another pair of stitches worked in rib stitch here and here. Finishing as usual with the so-called neat closing stitch, which is made by going with the hook both under the front and back vertical bar of this border stitch, like this. Okay, yarn over, pull through and drop a loop. The return pass for this tutorial is the standard one throughout. So we yarn over, pull through one loop only first, then we yarn over again and pull through 2 loops together, yarn over and pull through 2 loops together, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2 until the end of the row, and we are left with just 1 loop on the hook. So row number 2 of the repetition is made like this. First of all, as I said, the central pair is what I will call the stem pair, which is going to be this part of the leaf here, the central one, while these pairs I will call side pairs, that are only, in this case, decorative, let's say. And then when I'm going to form with the increases these parts of the leaf, they are going to be the ramification pairs. So first side pair is always worked in Tunisian Rib Stitch, as is the last side pair, just for the sake of this tutorial, so this one. Now we are going to make an increase around my stem pair, my central pair, and it will be, they will always be back bump increases. That is to say, I will go and search for the back bump, this tiny little stitch here, horizontal line here, behind my next vertical bar. So here I go and insert the hook there, like this, pull through and drop a loop on the hook, which is my first increase. Then I will work in rib stitch in my central stem pair here. So I will work in Tunisian simple stitch under the same stitch, under the vertical bar of the very same stitch where I just made my increase, which is here. And this stitch here, the next one in rib stitch, well, twisted stitch, okay? Now I need to make another increase, which will be done looking for the back bump under, behind the last stitch just made, okay? So here you can clearly see this is our stem pair, the central pair of stitches, and these are our increases before and after. Now we will work our final side pair in rib stitch again. Neat closing stitch in the border stitch here, and return pass. Row number 2 of our repetition. We will work into the first 2 stitches in Tunisian rib stitch. This is our so-called side pair of stitches. Now we have our first increase here. We will work it in Tunisian simple stitch. Okay. Now we will look for the back bump behind this stitch, this very same stitch. It is here. So I will make another increase there. There you go. And I have added a pair of stitches here with my increases. This is the central stem pair, which will be worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Now we have another increase, but instead of, we will do the opposite of what we have done here. That is to say, we will work the back bump increase at first. So we go behind that increase stitch here, look for the tiny back bump and drop a loop from there. And then we will work into that very same stitch in its front vertical bar in Tunisian simple stitch. So it's the opposite. Here I have created 2 new pairs of stitches through increasing. But here in the first pair I have worked in Tunisian simple stitch at first, and then I made the increase in the very same stitch, while here I've done the opposite. So I've made the increase first, and then I've worked into the very same stitch in Tunisian simple stitch. And I've done so as to change the direction of my stitches. You see? This is very important. Now, only our side pair of stitches left to work, and as usual we will work it in Tunisian rib stitch. Okay. Neat closing stitch and return. Okay, so row number 3 of the repetition. First pair of stitches worked in Tunisian rib stitch. So this is the first ramification pair, and we will work it in Tunisian rib stitch. This is the central stem pair of stitches, and we will work it in Tunisian rib stitch. Again, this is the first ramification pair, and we will work it in Tunisian rib stitch. Final pair of stitches, Tunisian rib stitch. Neat closing stitch and return pass. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, row number 4 of the repetition. Side pair, first initial side pair of stitches worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Now first ramification pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Now we are going to form another pair of stitches with increases, just like we've done before. So once again, this is our central stem pair of stitches. We will make 2 increases here and here, drawing up loops from the back bumps of these 2 stitches. So here, okay, then we will work the central pair in Tunisian rib stitch as usual. So we basically need to work in Tunisian simple stitch in the very same stitch where we have just done the increase, then twisted stitch in the next stitch, and our increase, our back bump increase in the very same stitch, in the very same twisted stitch behind it, okay? Just like before. First ramification worked in Tunisian rib stitch, side pair of stitches worked in Tunisian rib stitch, neat closing stitch and return pass. As you see, the number of stitches and loops on the hook is increasing as we go on, and then it will decrease again when we are going to shape our leaf motif. So row number 5 of the repetition, initial side pair of stitches worked in Tunisian rib stitch, then first ramification pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, here where we have our increase of previous row, we will work another ramification pair, the second one. So just like before, we will work first in Tunisian simple stitch in that increase stitch, and then we will look for the back bump behind the very same stitch. There you go, I have created another pair. This is the central stem pair, which will be worked in Tunisian rib stitch again. Here's my other increase, and just like before, I will work the increase at first, so the back bump increase at first, and then in Tunisian simple stitch in the very same stitch. And I have created another ramification pair. So here I have my former ramification pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, final side pair of stitches worked in Tunisian rib stitch, neat closing stitch and return. Row number 6 of the repetition. first side pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, first ramification pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, second ramification pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, central stem pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, first ramification pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, second ramification pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, last side pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, neat closing stitch and return pass. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So row number 7, I think I will write it properly, I promise, at the end of this video, if I have made some mistake talking. So row number 7 of the repetition is, we are going to add another ramification pair here. So we are going to repeat what we have done so far. So first side pair worked in Tunisian, rib stitch. This happens because it is not so easy to make the twisted stitch sometimes. So first ramification pair, rib stitch, second ramification pair, rib stitch. Now this is the central pair, the stem pair, and we are going to add stitches by making 2 back bump increases, one here behind the first of the 2 stitches here. Then we work in rib stitch in the central pair as usual, and then we will add another back bump increase from the very same stitch, and I will continue. So first ramification pair, rib stitch, second ramification pair in rib stitch, final side pair, rib stitch, neat closing stitch and return. So in the next row we are going to form our last ramification pair. So first side pair in Tunisian rib stitch, first ramification pair in Tunisian rib stitch, second ramification pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Here we will need to make another increase just like done before. So we work at first a simple stitch in that increase stitch, and then we make an increase in the very same increase stitch. Okay, and we have created our last ramification pair. This is the stem pair, the central pair, which will be worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Here we have our increase. We will work at first the back bump increase, and then we will work in Tunisian simple stitch in the very same stitch. Then first ramification pair, second ramification pair, side pair, neat closing stitch and return pass. In the next row of the repetition, we will work in Tunisian rib stitch across. So this is the side pair. This is the first ramification pair. This is the second ramification pair. And this is our third ramification pair. This is our central stem pair. And now, first ramification pair, second ramification pair on this side of the stem, third ramification pair, side pair, neat closing stitch and return. Okay, from the next row on of our repetition, we will start decreasing. So, first side pair worked in rib stitch. Now, we will make a normal standard decrease under the first ramification pair. So we go with the hook under both vertical bars of the next two stitches, yarn over, pull through, and drop one single loop. Now we will make a twisted decrease under the next two stitches. So we will make a decrease, but going with the hook from left to right under both stitches. I found it helps me if I stretch out the first stitch a bit with my hook first, then I go from left to right under the second stitch of the pair, insert the hook under both stitches, twist upward, yarn over, pull through both stitches, and I have created my twisted decrease here. The third ramification pair will be still worked in Tunisian rib stitch, and so will be worked the central stem pair of stitches. Now we will repeat in a mirror-like way what we have done here on this side of the stem. So first ramification pair will be worked in Tunisian rib stitch. We will work a normal decrease, a standard decrease under the second ramification pair, like this, yarn over and pull through, and drop one single loop. And we will make a twisted decrease under the third ramification pair. So I elongate a bit this stitch here, go under it, the next one like this, stretching out a bit, and here's my twisted decrease done. Side pair of stitches worked in Tunisian rib stitch as always, neat closing stitch, and return. So the number of stitches is now progressively decreasing, okay? So now in the next row we will work in Tunisian rib stitch across. So first side pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Where we had our double decrease in previous row, we will work in Tunisian rib stitch. Okay. The first ramification or third ramification, let's say, formerly worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Stem pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch. First ramification worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Here where we have our double decrease in previous row, we will work another pair in Tunisian rib stitch. Okay, side pair rib stitch. This is the neat closing stitch and the return pass. In the next row of the repetition, we will make other decreases. So first side pair, as always, in Tunisian rib stitch. Then, these are our two ramification pairs left. Here we will work again under this first pair of stitches in Tunisian, a normal standard decrease, like this. And in the next pair, let's say the former third ramification pair, we will make another twisted decrease, like this. Okay. This is our central stem pair, which is going to be worked in Tunisian rib stitch, as always. Here, our ramification pair, we will work in a standard decrease in Tunisian crochet, and in the next pair, a twisted decrease. There you go. Okay, then side pair. Neat closing stitch and return pass. Okay, so you can already see the leaf forming here. Now, in the next row of the repetition, we will work the first side pair in Tunisian rib stitch. Here we have another pair of stitches formed by decreasing in previous row. We will work this pair, this ramification pair in Tunisian rib stitch, central stem pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, ramification pair on the other side of the stem worked in Tunisian rib stitch, side pair, neat closing stitch and return pass. Okay, in the next row we will make another other decreases. First side pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch. Now, in the ramification pair left before our central stem pair, we will make a normal standard decrease in Tunisian crochet. We will work our central stem pair in Tunisian rib stitch, and we will work our ramification pair on the left side of our central pair we will make a twisted decrease. There you go. Side pair, worked in Tunisian rib stitch, neat closing stitch and return pass. Okay, so in the next row of our repetition we will make other decreasing. First side pair worked in Tunisian rib stitch, okay, now we will make a standard decrease under these two vertical bars, okay, and we will make a twisted decrease under the next two vertical bars, like this. Then we will work our final side pair in Tunisian rib stitch. Then we will make a neat closing stitch and a standard return pass. And in the final row of the repetition we will work again in Tunisian rib stitch across, ending up with the same number of stitches we have chained at the beginning. Neat closing stitch and return pass. Okay, and this is it. This is our leaf. Here we are in the same situation we had at the beginning. So you could virtually start all over again to create another leaf right above this one in the pattern. Yes, I have chosen for this tutorial to make two pairs of so-called side stitches before and after the leaf motif. Here, for example, in my cowl, I have spaced out the leaves motifs using two pairs, well, 4 stitches, leaf after leaf. Okay, so this is up to you. Also, the number of ramifications can be changed. You can make more to obtain a bigger, wider leaf, or you can make less to obtain a smaller leaf. So, as you see, it is not complicated to do. There are a lot of repetitions, but I promise that after a while, the repetitions are very clear to see and understand as you work, so you don't need to count or think too much about it, because you can see the stitches and work them as you find them, okay, more or less. So I hope you liked this long video. Thank you for watching, subscribing, and for your continuous support. See you next time with another video on Tunisian crochet. Bye bye.